and welcome to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast. My name is Jesse, and I'll be your host. Now, on today's episode, we're going to head over to the Snappy Snack Shack to get us some, snacks and Slurpees. We're going to head over to Westerberg High School so that, we can go see the big pep rally. And then also, in the meantime, I guess we're going to kill our best friends, kind of, or maybe, I don't know, who knows. But anyway, so in today's episode, we're going to cover 1988 Heathers, cult classic film of all time. But this episode, I cannot do this by myself. I cannot do this alone. Okay, this movie's too fabulous. It's too fashionable. Any of that stuff to do it all by myself. So I brought a guest with me today. Now, you may have heard him on the Movies That Made Us Gay podcast, covering 13. And I think he covered another movie on there too, as well. I know him from that, though. And also, he is a cast member at Disney, working for the Mouse. He's just a fellow gay in general that, I found on myself. And I'd like to welcome to my show, Mr. Donovan Marcotte. Donovan, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Love that. Love that. I'm doing great. Got home from work and, all this and ready to talk about a pod, right?
Yeah.
Now we became aware of each other. Like I said,
Yeah.
I knew who you were. I knew who you were from Movies That Made Us Gay. You did one of the best movies, 13, with Evan Rachel Wood and Holly Hunter. And
Thank you.
Good. It was great.
That was a great time. Shout out to Scott and Pete. They're fantastic.
Yes.
We love them.
I give them so much credit on my show.
Oh, right.
I do. I'm just I shout them out sometimes. I'm just hey guys. Anyway, but yeah, they're cool. But yeah, no, you did that episode and all that. Loved it.
Yeah, that actually a year ago around this time was my first episode with them, and now I'm on episode 3 with Movies That Made Us Gay.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
I'm gonna get on there soon too. We're gonna cover a little something. We were just talking a little bit about that. So anyway, cool. but that's cool and wonderful. And then I was like, well, I might as well get you on my show. I don't even know maybe you listened to an episode of mine or something, or you just were oh, hey, right? And so and generally anybody who follows me, I'll follow them back, and I'm just hey, thanks. But I was hey, you've been on a pod before, so if you want to come on mine, please do. And you were oh, I'll totally come on for these episodes if you want to do them. Which don't worry,
you
you'll
a
probably
laundry list of movies.
You really did. And so this one was one I chose because I was listen, I'd love to have someone cover this. Who knows? A little bit of a teaser. We might have you on for another episode that has also a nice special guest with you. Who knows? But that'll be so later exciting. In the year. Woo.
All right.
Anyway, but like we normally do on the show. So for my history of Heathers, I remember watching this movie, particularly after I'd already watched Jawbreaker. I had watched that when I was a young child. And I loved it. I still love it. But I had always heard, it's compared to Heathers. Oh, it's like Heathers. Da, da, da. And I was I don't know what the hell Heathers is. So when I finally got to be of age, when I was and of age, I mean 13 or 14. I think I probably found this on the IFC channel or the Sundance channel or something. Remember when you have cable, if you had cable and
yes.
you could watch that shit? That's where I watched Party Monster for the first time. I watched
love
Scream.
Party Monster. Yes.
I watched Scream there, things like that, where it wasn't just coming on basic cable, right? But anyway, so I think that's how I watched Heathers, and I'm finally glad I did. I was oh, now I know what they're talking about with Jawbreaker. Get it, I get it. 2 different movies, though. Totally will. But, that's my history, at least, with it, and I loved it ever since. But Donovan, what is your history with this movie? Why do you want to cover this? Why did you tell me you wanted to cover it?
I love Heathers. I have been a fan and obsessed with this movie since I was far too young to watch it. I remember watching this movie when I was a small child, probably 7 or 8 years old for the first time. I had very not so strict parents when it came to the parental control on the TV, right?
Same.
And I credit my mom for being the big movie buff in the family. So she introduced me to this movie and not deliberately. I think it was just on, right? In the background one day, and I was home from school, and it just was so taken with the fashion in this movie, right? I think anyone who's seen Heathers knows that fashion plays a big role in the identity of the characters, and with just the just how quintessentially 80s this film is, right? So that was what struck me first. And then as I got older, and then I got introduced to Jawbreaker and Mean Girls, and like really realized that this movie paved the way for all of those other films that we know and love so much. Yeah, I am such a big fan, so excited to talk about this film. And just Heather's everything. We can talk about the movie, we can talk about the musical. Like, I'm super into it.
I'm glad you bring up the musical because I have no idea about it at all, really, except like one song in it, and I know Ryan McCartan was in it. That's about all I know. Oh, and Barrett Weed, whatever her name is.
Barrett
I
Wilbur
totally
Weed,
forget.
yes.
That one who played
Mhm.
Veronica. I know that much. And there was an
Yes.
Asian Heather. I know that much, I think.
Okay, you know quite a bit then.
I think, but
Yeah.
it's just because I went to school for theater and like Broadway
Mhm.
stuff, so like whatever.
Yeah.
But it's all that. But yeah, no, I totally agree. And yeah, that was definitely me too. As a kid, I was just watching things I wasn't supposed to, which I loved. But
Mhm.
definitely for that. But yeah, no, totally, I totally get that. And
Yeah.
so I think when it comes to our normal show, what we'll do is we'll talk a little bit about, the history of this movie, how it came to be exactly. I did just watch a fun little thing on The Last Drive-In because they did cover this movie before. So I got a little bit of information from that, which was nice. And then we'll talk about, some quotes from the movie, critical response type quotes, and then also just a plot summary and things like that. So I'm
Cool.
going to pull up my Google Doc real quick so that I can get that information. We are well-oiled machine here, folks. Okay, that's what I'm doing. But this movie was directed by Michael Lehmann, and it was written by Daniel Waters of the Waters Clan.
Yes.
Produced by Denise Denovi, and it was released at Sundance actually in January of 1989. So it was 1989, and then it actually came out in the U.S. March 31st of 1989. We're looking at a budget of about $3 million or so, and a box office of about 1.1 million. So it bombed, and we'll get into that. But we're looking at a 93% on the tomato meter for certified fresh, apparently, which is crazy to me. If you look on this, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think so.
Yeah.
And then
No,
also
you're right.
83%, I think so, an 83% audience score. 7.2 out of 10 on IMDb, and then a 3.8 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So for our cast, we have Winona Ryder as Veronica Sawyer, Christian Slater as Jason J.D. Dean, Shannon Doherty as Heather Duke, Lisa Ann Falk as Heather McNamara, Kim Walker as Heather Chandler, Penelope Milford as Pauline Fleming, the guidance counselor, I guess. Glenn Shattuck as Father Ripper. Lance Fenton as Kurt Kelly, one of the jocks, and Patrick, how do you say his last name? Laboitrin or Laborta, something French, as Ram Sweetie, the other jock. Jeremy Applegate as Peter Dawson, M. Lodge as MC May, Renee Estevez as Betty Finn, who we're supposed to believe is ugly, nowhere to be found. Carrie Lynn as Martha, Dump Truck Dunstock. Chuck LaFont as Officer Milner. John Engel as Principal Gowan. Kirk Scott as Big Bud Dean, the dad of JD. Phil Lewis as Dennis, who we'll get into too, and William Court and Jennifer Rhodes as Veronica's parents, and then we have Stuart Mabry as counselor Paul Hyde. Quotes that we have from our critics, who we love. So we have Federico Ferzan from Cinelispis, which says, this supposedly relevant fable on teenage angst feels like a loud shout and nothing else. Rude. Dennis Schwartz from Dennis Schwartz Movie Reviews, so very highly, regarded, says a pointless satire on high school co-eds, acting bitchy and hanging out in cliques. Yeah, but then you have Roger Ebert, who actually gave this film 2.5 stars, and he says its inanities and glib pretensions are so thick that it mainly comes across as tacky and contrived. Actually, that was Jonathan Rosenbaum from the Chicago Reader. Damn, what do I have? Roger Ebert actually did say, for a long time, we're not even sure of the point of view. Is this a black comedy about murder or just a cynical morality play? The traveler is in a foreign country is not sure, but he knows the film inspires thought. So, Roger Ebert quote.
I was
What were
just
you
going to
saying?
say, I was saying how I hope that the creator of Beyond the Valley of the Dolls can appreciate this movie.
Yes. I hope so, right? Oh God. We'll get into it. You're coming on for that
Mhm.
episode when we're doing it. It's happening.
Hell yeah.
But oh my god, that movie is crazy. But no, it's so crazy though, dude. It's like, yeah, this movie bombed when it came out, and we'll get into it. But the basic idea of how this film came to be. So we'll move into some production history. So
Mhm.
generally, Daniel Waters was just some 26-year-old dude. I don't think he's gay, apparently. I don't know. I don't remember.
I thought he
But anyway,
was. Is he not queer? Oh,
maybe
weird.
maybe he is. I have no idea. He might be. Who knows?
Let me Google it right
Daniel
now.
Waters, call in. I don't know. But anyway, so he wanted to write a script pretty much. So he began writing the screenplay in the spring of 1986 when he was working at a video store, apparently. And he wanted this to be directed by Stanley Kubrick in particular. So he was like a young guy, and he really honestly wanted just like he just wrote this as a spec script. From what I understand, he didn't expect it to really get made, as spec scripts happen. You make a movie
Mhm.
and hope something, but
Yeah.
you're not really expecting to get it made. But after it got into the hands of Michael Lehmann, who had done a few things here and there, small stuff, he met through a mutual friend. He then got introduced to Denise Denovi, who then helped
Mhm.
produce this movie. And so they greenlit it. They were like, all right, let's make this movie, I guess, because why not? It was a lot more, it's still cynical, but it was a lot more dark when it first came out, really.
Yeah.
So for example, the ending of this was JD actually successfully blows up, spoiler, but he tries to blow up the school at the end. And the final scene is actually a surreal prom gathering in heaven, where one of his quotes is that the only time people in high school are nice to each other is in heaven or whatever. So that line is because that probably was in his original script, but they had to change it. And then New World Pictures was like, nah, bitch, like we can't have that. We'll finance the film, but they don't like the ending, so they need it to be changed. And we'll get into
I
New World
want to
Pictures
live in
too.
the alternate universe where that ending exists, though, because
I
I
know
want to see that.
too. And
Yeah.
I've heard also that it was like Martha Dunstock like was singing in it and like all this stuff. I used to have
Weird.
the DVD of this, or maybe a sister had it or something. I don't
Mm.
know, but there is like a DVD out there where Winona Ryder talks about this movie, and that's really fun because she also really likes this movie too. But yeah, so pretty much that's how it came to be. Again, he made the movie, he just wrote it, and it got into some guy's hands, and then it really came to be from that. So, all right, cool. You greenlit a movie. New World Pictures, was able to give the
Yeah.
movie money. Now we got to find a cast for this movie. So, generally, they didn't know who they wanted for the lead. They weren't sold on Winona at first. They really actually wanted, they wanted Justine Bateman, but she turned it down because she was
Mhm.
hot at the time about
Yeah.
sitcoms.
Yeah.
And then they also wanted Heather Graham. They didn't want
Yes. Yeah.
her.
I read that about Heather Graham, but she was
Mhm.
like
She was a minor.
like a literal child when they would have made this
Mhm.
movie, and her parents were like, "Hell no, you can't do this movie."
Yeah. And I guess she wasn't
Yeah.
emancipated or anything like that either, right?
Yeah.
So she couldn't
Mhm.
make her own decisions. And Jennifer Connelly was apparently thought of as well. Right,
Okay.
fair.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I feel like Jennifer Connelly, like probably her and Winona were around the same age, right? And
yeah,
I'm sure they were up for a
16.
lot of the same roles in
Yeah,
the
they were
late
16
'80s.
around that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, she was 16 at the time. Winona was. She had only really been in Lucas as the geek, and she had also just been in. She had just been in Beetlejuice, but it hadn't released quite yet. So they weren't
Yeah.
sold on her. They were like, all right. So she actually took her ass to the Macy's over at the Beverly Center to get a makeover to show I can play more than just the geek and the goth. All right, here you go. And it worked. She got cast. So
Mhm.
that's awesome. And so let's see who else. Brad Pitt apparently read for JD, but they didn't think he was that interesting. Same thing for Elvira. He also read for that, and he didn't end up getting it because he was too hot. So poor
I know.
whatever.
Poor baby Brad.
Poor baby Brad. So then you have these two. Kim Walker was brought in because she was actually dating Christian Slater at the time. She has now since passed away,
Okay.
unfortunately. But
Oh.
and we'll get into that too about how morbid this is a little bit.
Oh.
But she got it. She also was in Say Anything. She also was in
Yes.
that movie, and Lisa Ann
Yeah.
Falk, who also is in this movie, was also in that movie with her.
Yes.
Random. Like literally a year after this movie. It's crazy. Lisa Ann Falk, who was 23 at the time, had to lie about her age apparently, because she started off as like a teen model. So like of course
Yeah.
she's going to be cast in this. But
Do what you
yeah,
gotta
there's
do, I
that. You do
guess.
what you got to do. It wasn't until they found out afterward what her actual age
Mhm.
was, but she said she was a teenager. And then
Yeah.
Shannon Doherty wanted to be Veronica, but Ryder had already been cast. So they were like, hey, just play one of the Heathers pretty much. And she kind of was okay with it. Apparently she didn't know she was in a comedy. She just thought she was in like, I don't even know. Like
Like,
she didn't really like the cursing in the movie. Again, she was like a
yeah.
kid. So, and apparently her mom and her kind of threw their weight around a little bit on set. So, cause she was a child actress, like she was a known person by this point. Even a
Interesting.
little, probably
Okay.
more so than Winona, honestly, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
honestly. Yeah.
yeah. But anyway, so casting with that. And then I think they probably just got a lot of the other people, like adults and stuff, obviously, I'm just say like, yeah, that's pretty much there. I mean, Penelope Milford had just been nominated for an Oscar at one point. They brought her
Mhm.
in because she's good at being flighty, I think. Uh, the principal had actually been an actual principal in high schools in California before he became an
Oh,
actor. So
really?
he kind
I
of
didn't know
understood
that.
that,
That's
right?
cool.
Yeah, I know. And then there's that. And then, of course, we also have to talk about a little bit. So Phil Lewis, who's in this movie,
Yes.
who plays I think he's the editor of the newspaper or yearbook or whatever they do.
Mhm.
And we see him in like a scene. He then went on to become a gentleman who then is running a whole hotel on his own because he became the manager on The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. And that's what
That's
he's
right.
mostly known for,
Yep.
is that. So, and plus also you work at Disney. He technically worked for
Yep.
Disney before. So that's kind of fun. Yeah.
Love
And
the
then,
connection.
love the connection, right? We also, like I said, Kim Walker, she played Heather Chandler. She ended up actually passing away in 2001 at the age of 32 from a brain tumor. And of course, one of the lines in this is
One of the
literally, "Did you
lines
have a brain to
is a
brain?
tumor
Did you
for
have a brain tumor for
breakfast.
breakfast?" Right? And
Yeah.
then Jeremy Millgate, no, sorry, Jeremy Applegate, who plays, I don't remember his name, but he plays one of the guys in this movie, the
Mhm.
like geek dudes, who's like trying to get Habitat for Humanity money. He, in one of his prayers in the scene, we'll talk about it, but like in the prayer after Heather dies, he
Yeah.
says, "Please God, I hope that I can't do this because I could never commit suicide." And
Yeah.
then, he
And
then
he
killed
ended up,
himself years later.
oh my
So that's
gosh.
really unfortunate.
Wow. That is
But
morbid.
also, I guess too, in case anybody wants one and it feels like they need one, content warning for suicide for this movie. However, I will say that in this film, yes, the idea of suicide is touched upon, but really it's more so making fun of, it's a satire, so nobody's
Yeah.
actually really, really honestly
I
going
mean,
to die of
yeah.
suicide.
Like,
But yeah,
content warning for suicide, for eating disorders, for gun
yes,
violence.
all
This
of it,
movie has it
right?
all, kids.
It does,
Yeah.
dude. Like it really does. But I think the way that they do it is just very satirical. It's very dark.
Hmm.
So if you're into that, you're in the right place.
Yep.
So this movie took place about 33 days in February and March of 1988 on a budget of $3 million. So it's set in Ohio. It all takes place in LA. Really, it's all shot there, obviously. So pretty much
Yeah,
there's
they shot
that.
at like the Santa Monica High School, I think was one of the locations that
Hmm.
they used.
Yeah,
Neighborhoods in
John Adams,
Pasadena.
John Adams Middle School they used as well. Yeah, a
Hmm.
couple different places. So there's that. They apparently used the funeral scenes were done at the Church of the Angels in Pasadena, which has also been
Hmm.
used in Just Married. I talked about that movie. I
Like so
don't
many
care
movies.
for
Yeah.
it. And then also Buffy the Vampire Slayer was used there too, of
Yeah.
course, because everything's been on Buffy. But anyway, but yeah, and then the release of this movie. So again, this got released and well, what had happened was New World Pictures happened. We talked about it before on my Elvira episode, but New World Pictures, this was after Roger Corman had already sold them. He had already sold the company. So this
Hmm.
is, we also talk about it in Slumber Party Massacre because that's who released that movie. But they
Mm.
just were making movies that weren't doing great. Okay. That was kind of, but they also released Hellraiser, for example,
That's
so it's
true.
like, some of them did fine, but there were a lot of bad ones.
Hmm.
And because of that, guess what happens? You lose money, and then when you don't have money, then you have to close down your fucking production company, distribution company. So that's pretty much what happened. Is like literally the marketing campaign for this movie, which was targeted at teenagers. It didn't happen because they didn't have a whole lot of money. And really, teens hated this movie when it first came out. They didn't get it. They were like, nah, this isn't good. It actually got an older audience who liked it and found it.
Yeah.
But yeah, this movie, like, yeah, right now, I mean, yeah, it has like critic ratings that are good. But I think a lot of that is also because I guarantee you that 93% rating that I found is probably because of people who have now reviewed it. But when it first came out, people were like, oh no, what is this? It was misunderstood. And then because of repeat viewings on TV and things of that sort, and just, the collection of movies and all that, I think that really turned it into a cult classic. And Donovan, you were totally right when you said earlier, this paved the way. And I think Joe Bob even said it in his special. Check it out if you haven't, if you have Shudder. This is a great template to a teen movie. This is before Clueless. I do think that also kind of set a precedent. But I do think this one too did as well. Because this one in particular, this movie showed that you could go dark in high school. For sure. Because Clueless is not dark. But this is definitely. So when you have
the template also for like in a teen movie, there must always be 3 girls, right? Like
true.
Right? Like in Clueless, you have Cher and Ty and
Dion.
The other one. And Dion, right? And then you see it in Mean Girls, you see it in Jawbreaker. Like there's always a trio.
There was always a trio of girls, and it's the mean girls in there. You're right. Exactly. I agree. Yeah, no, it's totally that. And, it showed that. And again, talking about fashion as well. I mean, it showed that, you had this like heightened fashion going on as well. And again, I think it definitely, for better or worse, it has really, I would say it has really influenced the teen movie genre. And yeah, it's getting the credit it deserves. And it obviously has been for years. And so much so that it got turned into a musical. Now, again, I don't know much about this musical. So Donovan, if you know anything about it, please talk about it. And, but it ended up getting turned into a musical like other things did. So do you happen to know anything about how that came to be?
So I'll tell you that it's the same writing team that did Legally Blonde, the musical. So they already had a great track record with turning, like cult films into Broadway musicals. Lawrence O'Keefe, I think, is the lyricist. And it had an off-Broadway tryout in New York, played for a couple of months, closed, did not make it to Broadway, but it found a lot of success on the West End in London. And there is still currently a sit-down production in London that you can see to this day, as well as a touring production. And then something that I think we both forgot to mention was there was that like very short... I don't even think
the television show.
The television show, yeah.
Listen. The girl, one of the Heathers on it, became one of the girls in A League of Their Own, which I watched a couple of episodes of that. Not a bad show. Haven't finished it, but it's actually kind of fun. They diversify. It's very lesbian. Love it.
Love it.
And then also Brandon Scannell, I think, the boy Heather. He ended up being on that show Bonding on Netflix. Fun. Where he plays a stand-up and his friend is like a dominatrix. It's really fun. But yeah, I have not watched that show, unfortunately. It got a lot of backlash because how dare you try to make Heathers today or whatever.
Right. How dare you redo Heathers? How dare you have a fat Heather? Like, how dare you have a boy Heather? Like, come on.
Oh, okay, whatever. And also, here's the thing too, and then also just turning like the whole kind of thing on its head with Heathers, because the Heathers are not conventionally what is considered attractive. So how could you do that? But I mean, that's how it is, though. I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to work because it was 88 or whatever. Like that was a different type of thing. So they had to do it a little something. I don't know. Maybe I'll watch it and just see what it was like. Who knows? You're totally right. I didn't mention that. I totally forgot about it a little bit, honestly. But yeah, I mean, this movie has definitely... Yeah, this movie definitely has had a legacy, though. I mean, specifically, I could tell that because I'm a Jawbreaker aficionado, like Darren Stein definitely saw this movie when he was like a teenager. Probably he made that movie because of that.
Mm-hmm.
He has said that Daniel Waters literally confronted him saying, "Why did you rip my movie
Why
off?"
did you rip off my movie? I remember that. Yeah.
And I do not think it is a ripoff at all. The only similarity is that it's about teen girls, I guess. And
Teen
there's like
girls
an
who commit
accidental
murder.
murder.
Yeah.
But the thing is that it all is the thing that's different about it, though, is that there is no man in the middle of Jawbreaker that is inciting it all,
That's
which in
true.
this movie it
Yeah.
is.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's just one of those things. And there's so many different influences to Jawbreaker as well that aren't just Heather's. So,
Yeah.
whereas this movie, I can tell, well, you can tell a little bit maybe
Mm-hmm.
because of Daniel Waters' love for Kubrick, I can kind of see like,
Yeah.
okay, sure,
You
I can
can
see that.
you can see definitely the Kubrick influences and just how stylized this film is, the
Mm-hmm.
lighting, the camera
Yeah,
angles. I mean, I have it on in the background right now, and even just the scene where like the Heather is like on the bed and you just like see
yeah.
her like her bedroom and how just intentionally
Yeah.
placed everything is. I would also love to be in the alternate reality where Kubrick did direct this movie because that would be
That'd
fascinating.
be crazy, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
see what he's doing with like things like A Clockwork Orange. Like I could see that
Hmm.
influence in there. I could see like a lot of these different things I do see. Did he direct a Patton or like one of those war movies or whatever? Did he ever do one of
Yeah,
those?
wasn't it Full Metal Jacket?
That one, yeah.
Hmm.
So that was something also where they were like, "Oh, we wanted like the cafeteria scene to seem like Full Metal
Yes.
Jacket."
Hmm.
I haven't seen Full Metal Jacket, so I don't know, but I'll believe it. So you can tell that, like, I guess if you're a Kubrick fan, you can kind of see. I
Hmm.
mean, I don't see the Shining in this movie, really, honestly, but it's more so just
Yeah.
like, all right, whatever. Yeah, but we talked a little bit about the production history of this movie, talked about the legacy of it, things like that, and whatever.
Hmm.
Do you have anything fun to add before we move into a plot summary or anything, Donovan?
Oh gosh.
Anything we should know about, you
I
think?
uh not so much anything we should know about, but like I'm just curious to hear your thoughts. Like if a movie like this was made at a time where it was like a pre 9/11, pre Columbine
Mm-hmm.
world, like, you know, clearly it's a cult classic, it's found its audience, but do you think a film
Mm-hmm.
like this would be as popular today in like today's socio-political climate, or do you think it would be a cancel situation?
Oh my God, Barbara Walters coming in with the questions. I guess I would say I don't really know. I think it would be something that maybe a certain sect of young people would like, but I think and obviously we're becoming old, but I think people are so sensitive nowadays, and young folks are really sensitive as well.
Hmm.
Where I don't think it would make sense. And plus, also, I think we answered our own question a little bit when it came to
Mm.
just the TV remake, because
Yeah,
I
that's
think that
true
kind of
too.
shows us a little bit
Yeah.
to be like, oh, hey. Now, I'm sure Mean Girls did fine in terms of the musical stuff and whatever, but even that is like something where who knows, like but even that, like, for example, that is the most sanitized of any of those movies at
Oh,
all. It is
absolutely.
the most
Yeah.
family friendly thing you could watch, like whatever, even though it's
Oh, and it,
PG-13. I'm like, no, you could.
yeah.
Jawbreaker and
Eh,
this, like, fuck it, no. You could not
no.
make those
Yeah.
movies nowadays. It wouldn't work. It would only work for a certain sect of
Hmm.
folks, maybe, because I don't know if young people would. I don't know if they'll like it. I don't know. I have to get a young person, I guess. I don't know. But yeah, but that's a
For
good
sure.
question,
For
though.
sure.
That's a good
Yeah.
question. I'm trying to think anything that I can think of. Oh, fun fact that like Moby Dick throughout this whole movie is like read by Heather Duke or whatever. It was supposed to actually
Yeah.
be
The
Catcher
Shannon
in the
Doherty
Rye.
character. Catcher in
Yeah,
the
but it's
Rye,
gonna be
which makes
yeah.
a lot of sense. I kind of like that it's Moby Dick though. I think it just adds to the kind of absurdity of the entire
Yes, I
movie.
agree. Totally. No, totally, totally. But yeah, so I guess without further ado, though, we talked about all that history. We talked about just what we thought about the movie. So we'll move
Hmm.
into a plot summary. We have our intro to the movie where we have the New World Pictures come in and all that. And we have our intro to the Heathers. So the intro we have is somebody who might be Kim Walker. I don't know. But we see a girl. We see a girl to
Could
the
be a
back of
body
her
double.
head. Exactly.
Yeah.
We see a girl with the back of her head. She's putting her hair up into a ponytail with a ribbon. And
Hmm.
then we see these girls who are all the Heathers. We have Heather Chandler, played by Kim Walker. We have Heather McNamara, played by Lisa Ann Falk. And then we have Heather Duke, played by Shannon Doherty. And
Hmm.
we hear a wonderful cover of the song Que Sera Sera by Doris Day, sung by Sid Straw, which is the best version of that song. It's so good. I love the opening to this
Oh
movie.
my gosh. And the opening of
Oh,
the
so
dream
good.
sequence. Yeah, it's so cool. The way they
Yes.
crush the flowers with their step.
And so these girls are like sitting around the backyard. They then, like Donovan was saying, step over these flowers and they're playing croquet, which is very much a royalty type sport. So it's weird for
Hmm.
these girls to like play croquet. The one girl takes her shot. So I think it was Heather McNamara who takes her shot and she says, damn. Okay, so
Hmm.
it's your turn, Heather. And then she goes
Your
up to
turn,
Heather
Heather.
Chandler and she says, no, Heather, it's Heather's turn. So then Heather Duke goes up for her shot. And then we have Heather Chandler taking her shot. So we find out all their names are Heather. And they all have their respective colors. So Chandler is
Heather
red.
Chandler's red. I'm always
McNamara.
red.
Yes, exactly. And Heather
Hmm.
McNamara is green or yellow, I think. One of those. I don't
McNamara is
remember.
yellow.
Yes. And
Yeah.
then
And then Duke is green, who becomes
exactly.
red.
Yes. 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 You're right. Absolutely. But then we get because Heather Chandler takes her shot and she ends up bopping Veronica Sawyer in the head, whose head is just like above the ground and the rest of her body is underground.
Yeah.
And so we get our intro to Veronica Sawyer, played by Winona Ryder. And so she is writing in her diary. And so pretty much the Heathers and Veronica, they are now in school. So we see Veronica is sitting on the stairs writing in her diary.
Hmm.
And she's talking about the Heathers. And then the two Heathers, Heather Duke and Heather McNamara, they come up to Heather. They come up to Veronica.
Veronica. Yeah.
They come up to her and say, hey, like,
Heather wants
Heather
to
needs to
see
see
you.
you. Go to the calf and all that. She's like, all right, like, whatever, fine.
Yeah, you need to
So I'm
haul your
gonna go.
ass to the calf.
Haul your ass to the calf, right? Exactly. So she goes into the calf. So Veronica and the other Heathers go into the calf. They see Heather Chandler there. And pretty much the bright idea that Heather has this time is to forge a note of Kirk Kelly. So, like, forge his handwriting and put it on her lunch
Yeah.
tray.
Who's like
And
the
so
dumb
that's
jock
what it
in the
is.
school. Yeah.
Exactly, one of them, correct. And so
Hmm.
that is what they want to do. It'll make them laugh and it'll be funny. So this is when Veronica says, I don't have
Hmm.
anything against Martha Dunstock. Like, why should I have? And then Heather's
Yeah.
like, well, you don't have anything for her
I have
either,
anything for
though.
her either. Yeah.
And so she's like, all right, fine, whatever. So she forges
It'll be
this
very.
note. It'll be very, yes. And so they forge this note, which is pretty much like professing his love to Martha, apparently.
Hmm.
And so then in the meantime, we see Kurt and Ram at the lunch table together. And so they're talking about, like, God, I'd love to get, in between like a Heather Chandler and Veronica Sawyer sandwich, because this movie is just gross at that
Yeah.
point, because men are gross. Anyway, so you have these two jocks that are horrible. And so I believe it is Heather McNamara who puts the note onto Martha's lunch tray. And we see that she actually does read it, and she sees that. But then the Heathers and the Veronica sit down for lunch after they've done that.
Yeah.
And we get the intro to the lunchtime poll. Now, I don't know if this is just something that they do randomly, or I think it might be something that they do as part of the newspaper or yearbook or something. But apparently Veronica does it, I guess, or Heather Chandler does it or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. And it's
Whatever.
just like a way to fucking assert their dominance in the calf, right? Like they go around and even like you see like the different hierarchies of the high school kids. Like you have like the rich kids, the
Mm-hmm.
stoners, the geek
Right.
squad. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. No, you totally have that. And I think that was one of the first times that they were kind of having that. I mean, again, this movie is very much a satire of John Hughes films, really. And so, yeah, you kind of saw those like specified groups kind of, but this one definitely, again, it's kind of poking fun at that. I also love how that's called the Geek Squad, and then Best Buy ends up having a Geek Squad years later. I kind of love that. But anyway, so the lunchtime poll, so they go over to these preppy kids pretty much, and they ask this question of, you win $5 million from the publishing clearinghouse.
Publishers
And when that
Clearinghouse, yeah.
Yeah. And when that Ed guy gives you the check, aliens say they're going to blow up the world in 2 days. What do you do with the money? And for kids who are listening, Publishing Clearinghouse, it used to be where you could win like millions of dollars, apparently, and they would just come to your house and give you a big check. I don't know why. It was the
Yep.
80s. But anyway, so that's what it was. And then we also have, after they ask that question to these preppy kids, so like one of them says, I'd slide that wad over to my father, and blah, blah, blah. And then one girl says, I give it all to the homeless. Every cent.
Every
And then
cent.
Veronica says, you're beautiful. It's just so good. And then, Heather's like, well, if you're going to openly be a bitch. And then she's like, Heather, like, why can't we just talk to other types of people? Like, what the hell? Like, we talk to the same people. And this is where we get our iconic line of fuck me gently with a chainsaw.
Fuck me gently with a chainsaw.
Yes. And pretty much just like saying, everyone wants me as a friend or a fuck. I'm, worshipped here and I'm only a junior. And you're like, okay, girl, good for you. But we do have our intro to JD, Jason Dean, played by Christian Slater, doing his best Jack Nicholson impression because he idolized him. So he's just some guy sitting there with his lunch, as you do. And then we get our intro to Betty Finn. So Betty Finn is played by Renee Estevez, where we're supposed to believe she's ugly. There's nowhere to be found at all.
Because she wears glasses.
Yes, exactly. Very ugly, of course, whatever. But we see that Betty and Veronica knew each other. So that was a friend of hers pretty much before she got in with the Heathers. And so that's how we came to be with that. But, Betty shows her some photos of like Halloweens that they had been with kids, when they were kids, they had done Halloween together. And then like Heather just like pulls her away. She's like, come on, Veronica. And she's like, I was talking to somebody. We do see that a little bit. Also, fun little fact about their names. So Betty and Veronica. So those are obviously Archie comics. And for kids who are listening, if you ever watch Riverdale, that's pretty much where that all comes from.
That's what it is. Yeah,
that's what it is. And Sabrina too. Sabrina the Teenage Witch came from the Archie comics. But anyway, so for the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina fans. But anyway, so kind of, sort of. But anyway, so you have Betty Finn and you have Veronica Sawyer. So Betty Finn is an amalgamation of Betty, who's the nice one, and Huckleberry Finn, who's the nice one in his story. And then you have Veronica Sawyer, who Veronica is Veronica, who's kind of like
Veronica,
the bitch,
who's the bad girl, and then Tom Sawyer, who
is the bad guy kind of in his story, although not really, but like whatever. Anyway, but that's kind of a fun little thing to take away with that. But anyway, so we have that. All right, so lunchtime poll time. And this is also when she talks about how, like, why can't we talk to other people? So they decide to open their horizons and try to talk to other people. So they're asking other people. So you have, like, the Habitat for Humanity people with the Jeremy Applegate guy. Have him. You have, like, Betty Finn's asked a question. You have some, like, stoners outside who are asked the question, too. Just, all these different people being asked. I love how it ends where, the one girl's just like, she just like ripped a bong or something. She's just like,
what?
Yeah. They're just like asking her shit. It's so stupid. I love it. But anyways, so, all right, fun, wonderful, great. So then we're back in the cafeteria after that whole scene, and we see that Martha has already read the note that they forged and put on her lunch tray. But then she actually goes up to Kurt and Ram to like say, hey, look at this note you wrote me. And then they just laugh in her face and she just embarrasses herself pretty much. And then she just like runs away all embarrassed. And girl, I get it. Listen, I love you, Martha. Don't worry. Anyway, so after we see this and they get a nice little chuckle out of it, ha 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 ha. You then go to the bathroom with the girls, as you do. And we find out that apparently, Jesus Christ. So we find out that Heather Duke has an eating disorder and she can't throw up herself. Oh no, she needs to have her friend help her throw up. So like they literally have Veronica there and be like, Veronica, I need you to come back here. And you see her doing her nails and she's like, well, maybe you should see a doctor. She's like, yeah, maybe, like, whatever. And then Heather Chandler's just all like, come on, Heather, let's see what today's lunch looks like or whatever. And then they cut to a shot of like the garbage just being like, oh God, it's so gross.
Oh, it's so gross.
Good job though. Good job with doing that. But anyway, So then Veronica goes up to JD after they get back in the cafeteria because you can already see she's kind of likes him. And
Mhm.
she asks the lunchtime poll question. And he's just like, that is the stupidest question I've ever heard, though. But he says, like, oh, well, I'd take like a bottle of tequila out. I would take like this thing out to like the middle of the river. And I would just like vibe pretty much is what he would do, I guess.
Mhm.
But they kind of talk a little bit. And again, they're kind of getting this idea of like, okay,
Yeah.
like, here's who these people are.
Mhm.
Then we see the jocks, though, see that Veronica is talking to JD. They're just like, ugh, what is it? Like, who's that? Like, who's he think he is? Bo Diddley?
Mhm. Yeah.
And I love how the jocks, literally all they think of is just like, let's kick his ass. I'd be like, no, we're not going to kick his ass. It's fine. But they do go up to him, though. So, they like, take their finger and like I think it's Kurt or Ram, like they take the finger and they like stick it into his mashed potatoes or something, right?
Yeah.
And because I am one, I can say this. They do say, doesn't this school have a no fags allowed policy? And then he's like, no, but they sure have a whole lot of tolerance for assholes or whatever. And so then he's like, what did you say, dickhead? And then he's like, let me make myself clear. And so he actually, JD literally takes out a gun.
Pulls out a gun. In a high school.
And just shoots these guys, but doesn't actually shoot them. Actually shoots them with blanks, what we find out.
Yeah.
Because then the next scene is like literally the Heathers talking about it.
The Heathers talking, they're playing croquet, they're talking about him. Yeah, it doesn't get expelled for that, which...
No. Yeah, whatever, it's fine. But anyway, so the Heathers, they're playing croquet, all that good stuff, and then Veronica's there too, because it's her house. And so they're then like all leaving, the Heathers all leave together. And so we find out during this conversation, though, that there is a party at Remington University, I think it's called, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And Heather, Chandler, and Veronica are going there tonight. And that's what's going to happen. We find out a little bit about that earlier, but this is when we actually know. So then when the Heathers leave, Veronica and her parents sit down for some pate, as you do when you're rich.
As one does,
Yes, as one does. Yeah. And anyway, so then you have them, and it's literally... I love how they do this. So Veronica's talking about whatever, and then her mom's just like, well, something or other. The parents are so incidental in this movie, really, especially Veronica's.
Yeah, and that's like intentional though, like just to kind of show how superficial their relationship is, how the parents aren't really present in the lives of their kids.
Agreed. Yeah, that's really what it is. So like, and then her dad says, God damn it, why do I do this? And then she just says like, because you're an idiot.
You're an idiot.
And then she's like, oh, yeah. And then the mom just goes, you too. It's very superficial, right? You were totally talking. Totally talking about that. And it's supposed to be like that. So then, Veronica also just says, like, great pate, but I got a motor if I to make that party on time. And so she then leaves. We then see Veronica stopping over at the Snappy Snack Shack, which was going to be 7-Eleven, but 7-Eleven was like, fuck no, we're not letting you use this. And so she goes to the Snappy Snack Shack to get some snacks, corn nuts in particular for Heather.
BQ or plain?
BQ. And so she meets JD there. And so he talks about how, like, hey, I've moved around a bunch, but there's always a Snappy Snack Shack. And, I can have a turbo dog. It makes me feel normal. And so they talk a little bit outside when they're done. And pretty much what they're talking about is just like, hey, what are you doing here? Like, what's up? I'd be like, how is your life going? Your life must be perfect. And she's like, nah, not really. I kind of hate my friends.
I don't really like my friends. They're like people I work with, and our job has to be being popular and shit.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's so funny because the thing is about this movie is you don't find out how Veronica got in with the Heathers. It just starts off that way. So it's kind of like, okay, I guess she's popular. We don't know.
Which is something they talk about in the musical. The musical starts with like the day that she meets and becomes friends with the Heathers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Which is kind of cool.
Which we don't even know if it's like a Katie Heron kind of situation or like whatever the hell, but like, who knows? That's a whole other movie though. But anyway, so they talk outside a little bit, but they do see that JD and Veronica, they do have a nice little connection with each other
going on. Yeah.
And it won't be the last time they see each other. So then you have Veronica and Heather go to the party at Remington University.
Remington
And so it's like
University, yeah.
it's like your normal college party. But we find out because we have this cut in between. We have this cut with Veronica writing in her diary about how her night went.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
we find out that pretty much like, I think it was Heather Chandler, she hooks up with a guy. She ends up giving him oral from what we assume or what we can infer. And
Yeah.
Veronica is just like, oh God, this is horrible. She's drinking. She doesn't really know her tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
And she like talks to this guy who just is trying to get laid. And she's just like, yeah, you're gross. Like, ugh, you know, men, horrible.
Yeah. And, you know, Winona Ryder's wearing this like kimono and a monocle, and it's just,
when
it's
she's
just
writing,
fabulous.
It's really nice. And she has like a nice party outfit on when she's at the party.
Mm-hmm.
But then pretty much what happens is that, and we also see a scene with Heather who has like taken some water or mouthwash in her mouth and she just spits it in this mirror she's looking at herself in, being like, you dirty girl, you dirty, dirty girl.
Yeah.
How could you do that? But anyway, so they meet back up in the movie. So Veronica and Heather meet up. She's like, I don't feel good right now. Like Veronica's like, I don't feel good. Like we need to get out. And so she's like, no, fuck no, we're not leaving. Like Heather's like, no. And so then, well, Veronica pukes on Heather's shoes right in the middle of the party.
She blows chunks.
Yep. Wonderful. Great. Anyway, so that definitely is a fallout that they have. So they go out, and by this point, Veronica had been playing with like some matches, and she put one accidentally in her like alcohol, and then she just like threw that out a window, and it went into a trash can. So
no, it's like so atmospheric. It's like the trash can fire, and there's like the blue gel lighting.
It's so good.
Yeah.
But they go outside of the party because, you know, they're just like, you stupid fuck. And then Veronica's like, you goddamn bitch. And then they're just like, you know, talking, whatever. Be like, is this what I get for you? Is this what I get? Like, I got paid in puke, you know? Like, and then Veronica's just like,
Veronica,
lick it up, baby.
Lick it up, baby. Lick it up.
Yep.
Iconic line.
So good. So good. And people don't even know sometimes where it maybe comes from, but it kind of just comes from this movie. But this is when Heather says, you know what? Transfer to Washington, transfer to Jefferson. Like, nobody at Westerberg's going to play your reindeer games. Like, your history. You thought you were going to be in my little group? Nope. You know, Veronica's like, shit. Okay. Oh, fuck. So they fall out. They go home respectively again. Veronica is a journal writer, so, you know, she's writing. So then we see that Veronica throws her diary across the room. And in the meantime, JD has stopped by. And he says, hey, I saw that you have a set out there. You up for a game of croquet? And instead, they play strip croquet, and they just have sex in Veronica's backyard, apparently.
Yes.
Yeah, you know,
as you do.
So Veronica talks to JD about a little bit of, you know, oh God, my life is a mess. And just one time, I'd like to see Heather Chandler blow chunks. And so he's like, all right, well, let's do a little something, right? So the next morning, they go to Heather Chandler's house. They just break in pretty much. Well, they didn't break in. I mean, it was unlocked, but it's breaking and entering kind of. So anyway, they go into her kitchen and they're like, all right, what can we do to make her throw up? All right, cool. Let's do like orange juice and milk. That might be good. Or maybe we can do like, you know, some soup in a Coke can. Let's do that. But JD has the bright idea that, oh, hey, let's just take some drain cleaner and put it and have her drink that. And Veronica's just like, what the fuck? Like, that'll kill her. We don't want to kill her. Like, what are you talking about? So they decide, they're like, okay, well, maybe we can do the orange juice and milk thing and then just like hawk up a phlegm globber in it, right? And so they try to do that, but it didn't work. But okay, milk and orange juice, that should work just fine. It'll make her kind of puke and they'll get what they want. Now, in the meantime, though, she's made the concoction, but then JD has also put this drain cleaner in a cup. And there's like a cover because it's like she won't drink anything that looks like that. So we got to like cover it up. So he really does, like, I think he switches the cups, it seems like, when she's not looking because he kisses her. And that's how he distracts her. And so he switches the cups. And so she actually takes the drain cleaner and then the actual what she made is what is left behind. So then they go upstairs, and then, Heather Chandler's like, looking all fabulous on her bed.
Yeah.
She's waking up on her clamshell bed. And so
In
then
her clamshell bed, like fucking Barbie. Yeah.
no, like literally. But so there's that, and then she wakes up. She's like, Veronica, and I don't know what she calls the JD.
She's so calm too. I love it.
She is really calm, but she's just like, she's references how you puked on my shoes last night. And Veronica's like, I think we said a bunch of things that we didn't mean yesterday. And then she's like, okay, whatever. And here's a peace offering, here's this. And she's like, what'd you do? Like spit in it? Like, I'm not gonna drink that piss. And then he's like, well, if you're not gonna do it, like if you're chicken, like, or whatever, or if you're like not gonna do it, if you're not up for a challenge. And she's like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, just give me the cup jerk. Like, I'll drink whatever the hell you're making me try to drink. Apparently it's a hangover cure is what they tell her.
Yes.
Yeah. So she doesn't look at what she's drinking in this like little mug or whatever. And so she downs it pretty much. And we find out that it's the drain cleaner she actually drank. And so we see that she's starting to retch it, whatever, all that. And then she like takes her hands on her throat, and she's just like, corn nuts. And she literally falls through her glass table,
shattering the glass.
Pretty much she dies. And so they're just like shocked as hell, and they're just like, oh my god, like what the fuck, like this is horrible, like what are we supposed to do? So then JD has the wonderful idea that, okay, we need to make this look like it was an accident, it was a suicide, pretty much, gotta do something. So they're like, okay, well, I guess we can like, do that or whatever. And like, she just doesn't know what to do with herself, to be honest. Good old Veronica, because she apparently can do everyone else's handwriting, which is weird because her handwriting is horrible. But anyway, for whatever reason, JD is the one who's making up the pretty much, I guess, what is that? Suicide note, right? And so she's like, this is good. Like, have you done this before? And they don't say it, but I guess he has thought of this before. It's implied. And so they just leave this, and so people start to find out about Heather Chandler and how she died. So then we move into a faculty meeting of the school, pretty much. And so we have these teachers all sitting around. One of them is Penelope Milford playing Pauline Fleming. You have the principal there. I like the one English teacher who during the scene before said they said in the suicide note used the word myriad, and Veronica's like, well, that's good, but she failed the vocab test on the word myriad or whatever. Like, that's even better. And so pretty much, like, I like the English teacher being like, I liked her use of the word myriad. I like the proper use. So good. Anyway, so they're talking a little bit, and Pauline Fleming's all like, I think it's just tragic that this is just so that whatever she's talking about. And then the principal's just like, thank you, Miss Fleming, like, call me when the spaceship lands. So they have that, and it's just showing how
she's
unaffected.
She's like the school like wellness coach, or like
something.
I don't know what she's something like the guidance counselor.
Right, exactly. So you're just like, okay, whatever. Anyway, so Heather and Veronica, they're in the the Heathers and Veronica are in the locker room together. And pretty much what's happening is that, Heather Chandler's dead. And like Heather Duke is literally just eating chicken. She's just like, oh, you're actually eating? She's like, yeah, fuck it, whatever.
Unbothered.
Totally understand. Anyway, so Veronica's all like, some girl comes up to her. It's the girl from earlier, and she's like, sorry to hear about your friend. I just thought she was a dumb, airheaded bitch. We were all wrong. And then you're like, okay. And then Veronica's just like, what the fuck? This is horrible. So she just like walks into the shower and literally just like gets in the shower with all of her clothes on. And then Heather McNamara is like, Veronica, what are you doing? Are you okay? How you doing, buddy? No,
she's in shock.
Yeah,
she's not okay.
Yeah, she's not okay. I do appreciate that they do not linger on Winona Ryder's body because they kind of couldn't because she was underage. So thank God. But anyway, so you then have class with Miss Fleming. So I guess this is her talking about, you know, they're decompressing after this event. Everyone's talking about their feelings. So you have fucking the one guy from Habitat for Humanity or whatever the fuck trying to raise money. He's all like, well, Heather and I used to date or whatever. And then you're like, okay, what the fuck? Whatever. And I like how Veronica is just like she's like sitting down on like a couch thingy, or like she's sitting down not in a desk, and she's just like laughing. She thinks everything is so funny about this, but then it's funny because she's laughing and then it looks like she's crying because she's just like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be sad, right? Yeah. But
and then it cuts to the funeral, right? Which is so funny. Because
kind of, sort of, because then you have, well, not quite yet. We see Veronica and JD together, and they're watching footage of people.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, who have so they're watching, like, I guess news footage or whatever. So like the guy who was talking about how they used to date is on there. Yeah. And then you have Heather Duke is there, and she's just like, we used to be able to share the same size and blah, 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 and whatever. And she's like, Heather, how many things did you run to? Which is funny. And so then, they're just talking about Heather or whatever the hell they did. And then we get our intro to JD's dad, Big Bob, or whatever the fuck his name is. And so we get a little bit
so creepy.
He is really creepy. I don't like him. He's freaky. Anyway, but so we have our intro to him, and they have this little thing where, like, you know, the dad calls, hey, you know, dad, and then, you know, JD calls him, oh, hey, sport, or whatever. So there's that. We get a little bit of the idea that JD doesn't have a mom, I guess. We do get introduced to that a little bit. And then we have Veronica going back to her parents before the funeral. And this is where, because she's in her, like, funeral, you know, garb or whatever. And again, it's pretty much the same scene that was before she went to the party, where it's literally like, you know, oh, are we ever going to meet this, like, nice young boy or whatever that you're with or whatever the hell? And then her dad is, like, smoking, and he's just like, tell me why I smoke these things. And she's just like, because you're an idiot.
Because you're an idiot.
Exactly. And so that's what happens with that. She's like, oh, great pate, but I got a motor if I'm going to make it to this like, funeral or whatever. So you have that. And then you actually have Heather Chandler's funeral, which we have Glenn Shattuck playing the priest. Rest in peace. Yes. He was the voice of the mayor in The Nightmare Before Christmas. He was in Beetlejuice. Love him. So, you know, it's very sad that he has since passed away. Very, very sad. But anyway, so it happens. But we have this whole funeral going on. You know, everyone's there, and it's all nice and wonderful. Yeah. Kind of sort of for as good as a funeral as it'll be. And then we see each person go up and give their respective prayers. So we have, like, the morbid prayer from the Jeremy Applegate guy, who's all like, you know, he's all yikes, like, you know, yikes, not good. It's just very ironic. But there's that. There's like the jock who, I think it's Ram or Kurt, he says, like, you know, why'd you kill such hot snatch? And you're just like, ew, gross. You see that Heather Duke has just prayed for her death, and she didn't think that, you know, I knew it was wrong every time, but I see that you were listening. Praise God.
Thank you, Jesus. Hallelujah.
So
yeah.
It's so good. But yeah, so anyway, they're leaving, you know, so like, Heather McNamara is using the holy water to, like, do her hair. And she's like, hey, Veronica, what are you doing? And she's like, I don't know, like, you know, just hanging out, probably watching TV, you know, in the morning. What are you doing? So Heather asks her to double date with, because I guess that girl's, Heather McNamara is with one of the jocks, and, like, they have to go on a double date or whatever the fuck. I mean, okay, fine, whatever. So she's like, okay, I kind of had something up with JD, but, like, okay, whatever, you're my friend. I guess I'll do it. It's fine. Then you have the scene outside. This is where they had just married at. In Pasadena. And so they are there. Kurt and Ram are there, and they are, what are they doing? They're like, they are saying something about something. I don't remember, but like these two geeks are there, and they're all like, you know, oh no, like the geeks like walk by them, and I think they step on their shoe or something like that. Some bullshit. Yeah. And anyway, so, like, let's kick his ass. Be like, no, let's not. And then the one, like, geek guy, like, turns around. He's like, oh, yeah, sit and spin. He flicks him off. And then they, like, run around and they, like, chase him or whatever. And then he gets them on the ground. So, like, the Kurt or Ram gets them on the ground. And he's, like, you know, pretty much saying mercy or whatever. And he's like, say you like to suck big dicks. And then he's like, I'd be like, what? Whatever. And this scene is really funny to me because, like, literally the geek is, like, being tormented for good reason. He was being a dick. But anyway, so when, like, he's like, he even says something, he's just like, okay, you like to suck big dicks. And then he's like, oh, no. And then he's just like, I can't get enough of them. And I'm just like, girl, as a gay, I'm like, hey, it's not the size of the boat, it's the motion of the ocean, but whatever, it's fine. But anyway, this movie is not exactly the gayest of friendlies, although the gays love it, but it was the 80s, whatever. But anyway, so you have that, but then JD also drives by on his motorcycle that he has. Who gave him a motorcycle license? I don't know. But anyway, so you have that going on, and you see him drive by being like, all right, like, those are our next targets, I guess, right? So then we see that, Heather McNamara and Veronica, they go, and she's like, oh, no, don't worry, it'll be fine. Like, we're going to do this double date. And she's like, well, I hope it's not just us, like, sitting in a field somewhere and like,
catching them. Exactly.
And then that's what it is.
And then it turns out,
it turns out to be that. It's great. And so they tip over. So Ram and Kurt, they tip over a cow. And then literally the manure just gets into the girl's face. So that's a great, wonderful way to, have a date, I guess. And then you have legit a sexual assault in the movie, kind of, sort of, pretty much, where it's like, who's with who? So I think it's Veronica is with Ram. And then I think Kurt is with the other Heather.
With Heather, yeah.
But, like, literally, like, Kurt and Heather or whatever are just, like, literally making out in the back. But, like, I think it's kind of against her will a little bit. It's just, like, really weird.
Yeah,
she's just, like, literally getting date raped. It's not funny at all, but it's just really odd. And, again, satire. And, like, literally just, like, Veronica just, like, goes and leaves. Because then JD's up at the top of this hill that he's at. Because they're at the bottom of the hill. And she, like, is like, hey, I got covered in, like, fucking cow manure and mud. And he's like, and JD's just like, hey, let's go on, right? I say in my notes, Veronica and JD scamper off. So they scamper off to go do whatever the hell. Then we have the next day in the yearbook room, newspaper room, whatever you want to call it. And we have that a rumor has now spread. So Veronica comes into the room and she's talking to the one gentleman who is, like, the editor, played by Phil Lewis. And they have this, like, weird fucking, like, memorial for, like, Heather Chandler that's going to be in the yearbook, apparently. Which I'm just like,
yeah, it's like a spread.
Yeah, it's like a spread. But then also rumor has spread because Veronica says something about, like, I just don't think it has much taste, or it's kind of tasteless. And then somebody says, oh, like, last night, Veronica? And she's like, excuse me, what did you say?
Excuse me, what?
Yeah. And so we find out from Jeremy Applegate's character, we find out from him that apparently the rumor was that Kurt and Ram had a little sword fight in Veronica's mouth last night. She's just like, ew. And again, Veronica, don't kink shame. It's fine. But, but that isn't nice for them to say that. And they're just saying that because, fucking they're losers pretty much. But whatever. And so she's just like, okay, this is fucking gross. And so we see later that night, we see that Veronica decides she wants to call Kurt and Ram with JD in the room. And so she calls Kurt to go arrange a threesome with them, pretty much. And so JD is then talking a little bit as well. Do you remember what he says after they get off the phone with each other? Do you happen to remember that?
Oh, gosh.
Say something. I don't remember what they'll say. Anyway, he's talking a little bit about whatever the fuck. Oh, you know what it is? So he's talking about how, like, hey, here's what we're going to do, right? So he's talking about, like, how, well, don't worry. Like, here's what we're going to do. We're going to lead them out into the woods, pretty much, and we're going to make it seem like they're gay. That's what we're going to do.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, shocker, right?
And then he brings over all the gay paraphernalia.
Yes. So that's like issue of Stud Puppy. You have Liza Minnelli or a Joan Crawford.
Joan Crawford postcard.
And then we have that. And then the big one is Mineral Water. Very much Tuong Fu thing as well. By the way, Tuong Fu is on Tubi right now. Go watch it. But anyway, so Yeah, I know, right? But anyway, so they decided to talk about that. And so then they're talking about like, okay, so you're telling me like if we shoot these guys, we can use these bullets that are not going to like kill them apparently.
Kill them, yeah.
Because he did it before, I guess. So like, all right, cool. And he says that they are Ish Luga bullets, and he got them from like his grandfather in World War II or whatever the fuck. Anyway, so then we see the next scene is Veronica meeting Ram and Kurt in the woods at dawn. Like she was talking about on the phone with them, and pretty much what happens is that I think Kurt just says like, "So should I just like whip it out or
should we
whatever?"
Just like whip it out or what?
Yeah, right. You got all butch there for a minute, Donovan. Okay, listen. You are almost a married man.
Yeah?
So, listen. But anyway, so, yeah, but they meet in the woods. She has like a little circle, for each one of them, respectively. And so they strip down to their underwear and stuff like that. And then we see that, she's counting down. She's like, all right, 1, 2, and then 3. And then JD comes out. He shoots, I think, Kurt, if I'm not mistaken, or Ram, I think, actually. He shoots him, and then Veronica is about to shoot Kurt, and she misses. And then, again, she's thinking, like, oh, these aren't actually going to kill. And he's like, did you really just miss like that? And then she's like, yeah, but it was so, priceless to see their face. And he's like, oh, no, don't worry, I got you. And so he's chasing after Kurt at this point. And then Veronica, because she's just a little bit, she's very smart apparently, from what we found earlier, but she lacks some sense apparently, because she really thought that these were just like bullets that weren't going to hurt anybody. But she realizes that Ram is actually dead and JD is chasing down Kurt pretty much. So they run all around. In the meantime, you do see that there are these police officers that are in the mix a little bit too, because they did hear the shots at some point. And then pretty much what happens is that JD leads Kurt back to where the clearing was. And pretty much what happens is that Veronica actually just shoots Kurt. And that's pretty much what happens there. And now they're dead. And so they had to set up their plan of like making them seem like they're gay. Do you have any other thoughts about this particular scene or anything like that?
No, it's just like...
It's a very known scene, I guess, right? Like people know it and whatever.
Yeah. No, this is a pretty known scene in the movie. I do love the dumb police officers who find
They're
them.
really stupid, right? And they find them like making out in the car or whatever. And then like the one guy
doesn't even think to question them.
Be like, are they naked? And then he's like, ew, that's weird. Like with them with their teenagers. Yeah, it is kind of lame that like the whole thing is, like, oh, these like jocks are like homosexuals or whatever. And you're just like, yeah, whatever. Now, yeah, you got the remake or whatever. Now they're all gay. But anyway, so it's fine. But yeah, so then you have, after all of that, after the police have kind of come through and all this kind of shit, you see that Veronica and JD have come back to the school. They're sitting in his car, I guess. And so they're both just like having a cigarette in their mouths. And like, so she pushes like the lighter in her car to like, be able to use it. And she just literally takes, she like, pops it out. And then she just is so in shock and so despondent, if you will, that pretty much she like just uses it to herself.
To feel something, there's definitely also self-harm in this movie too. Warning for that.
But another trigger warning. It's it is. Yeah, not fun. But then of course, like JD has to light his cigarette on her like wound. Wound. What a dick. Anyway, so then you see that they have the repressed homosexual suicide pact. So, didn't you hear? School's canceled today because, Kurt and Ram killed themselves in a repressed homosexual suicide pact. I love the way that the girl says this in that, really, too. It's very funny. Because
they say that the full title every time, too.
Yes, so you have to. Anyway, so yeah. Anyway, so then you have, like, because the Heathers come up and they see, like, the two in the car, and they're like, oh, young love, they must be the lovers' quarrel or whatever. But then you move into Kurt and Ram's funeral, which is also an iconic scene because the jocks are literally in their football outfits. So stupid. And they're both dead in their football outfits. And so I think it's Kurt's dad who's talking about, like, his son and how he still loves his son. And this is where we get the iconic line. Yep, I love my dead gay son. And we see that Heather, so Veronica and I think JD are there, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe the one that Heather's is there. And she's laughing. And then we see that, like, I think it's one of their sisters, one of their little sisters, Kurt or Liz, is like there, and you see like she was crying and like
crying.
Yeah, Veronica feels like a dick, which she should feel kind of like a dick.
Well, she should feel like a dick. Yes. She did kill them.
She did kill them, so you don't get off the hook.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have our next faculty meeting after this suicide that happened. So again, it's one of these things that we have in there. And then we have something called the New Happiness, which I guess Miss Fleming is spearheading to try to make yourself not kill yourself, apparently.
Yeah.
And so
it reminds me of the classes that they took in Donnie Darko?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Like self-help classes.
Exactly, right. And so they're in the lunchroom, so Miss Fleming's in the lunchroom, and she's just like trying to get everyone to get up and like feel their feelings, apparently. Okay, cool, whatever. So then, again, because like JD and Veronica are not into any of this, so they end up leaving. And pretty much what happens is that Veronica and JD, they end up at JD's house, I guess, and they're there just chilling, apparently. And we see that his dad comes in there as well. He's like on his like Stairmaster or whatever the fuck, his like electrical bullshit. We find out that JD then shares that pretty much his dad blew his mom up, I think. So his dad's also a killer, I think, because his dad is like a demolitioner, pretty much. He like destroys
buildings. His mom ran into the building at the very last minute, I think is what happened.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah. So they're like fighting. Veronica and JD are fighting or whatever, because they're just like, listen, it's one thing, to like say, okay, they were just being dicks, but like I didn't want them dead. And then, JD's all like, all they were going to be good for is just like age jokes and like date rape or whatever, He's like, we were doing him a favor, whatever. And so then you have, JD turns the radio on and he like tunes it to the station where they have a song called Teenage Suicide Don't Do It by Big Fun.
Yeah.
It's actually a catchy kind of song. And so he ends up taking one of his guns and he just like shoots the radio. And this is where we have the line of, "That's it. We're breaking up."
We're breaking up.
Yep. It's so very, very much that. I love it. It's very funny. At this point, I think Veronica is just like, all right, we're breaking up. We are done, JD. We're not doing this anymore. I can't stand you.
Yeah.
So, okay, cool.
And then it gets a little, like, domestic violence-y.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Not cool. Anyway, so then that happens. And in the meantime, we have that, okay, they're all, like, it does get weird because, like, he's just, like, doesn't know when to say no, and it's just really weird. Anyway, so then JD meets with Heather Duke, and he decides to blackmail her, pretty much. Because what we find out is that Heather Duke and Martha were actually friends when they were kids.
BFFs. Yeah.
Yes, and they have photos and everything, and she's just like, oh, God. So then JD gives Heather Duke this red hair ribbon that he has. And so then in the meantime, he gets his hair ribbon, and then we find that Veronica has now went back to her friend Betty. And so now they're playing croquet in her backyard, which is fun. And so Veronica, Betty calls Veronica like Ronnie, for example. And it's just nice to see them talk to each other and just get to know one another. But then like the Heathers come over, those remaining Heathers come over.
These
and
bitches.
So, and Betty just kind of like leaves, and she's just like, yeah, I'm going to go now. Thanks for the, croquet game. Like, thanks for hanging out with me. It's nice. So that's cool. So then we have Martha, who is just sitting by herself. And we see that it's supposed to be in the gym, I guess, and apparently we think that there's a game going on because of the sound. However, there isn't any thing going on. She's just sitting in the empty gym, like on the bleachers by herself.
Yeah.
She drinks a Coke or something, that then spills all over her, and she's just like, whatever. And this leads her enough to then just like try to walk out in traffic, apparently.
Kill herself.
She does try to kill herself, and that's actually sympathetic because she's actually a character that is totally not deserving of that. But and so then you have after you see all that, and then Veronica comes back home, I think. Heather Duke, so Veronica comes in there, and then Heather Duke comes into Veronica's house. And she's telling her that, like, hey, like, Martha dump truck, like, you know, waddled into traffic and, like, got hit by a car or whatever. And Veronica's like, well, is she dead? Like, what's wrong with her? And she's like, no, that's the worst part. Like, you know, she's in critical condition, but, like, she's still alive. And then pretty much, like, you know, Heather says something about, like, you know, it's the geeks, like, trying to, you know, imitate the popular or whatever. And so Veronica just slaps Heather at that point. She's like, you know what? You're a bitch.
Fuck
like,
you.
What is wrong with you, dude? Anyway, so Veronica and Heather go up into her room because, of course, they do, because you just slapped her. But, you know,
so we're fine. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They go up and listen to the radio, and they're listening to, like, you know, music or whatever. But then it's like a talk radio show, and they hear Heather McNamara calling into that radio.
Yes.
And so the reason she's calling in, so first off, she's trying to find a pseudonym for herself. So first off, she uses Madonna, and then she uses another name or whatever. And so she's talking about how, like, you know, all of her problems, like her parents are divorced, and the guy that she just lost her virginity to killed himself the next day, like all this kind of shit or whatever, right? So we see Heather McNamara's going through it, and Heather Duke is all like, she knows we listen to this show. Like, we're going to crucify her. Because Heather's just become emboldened at this point.
Yeah.
Heather Duke. Yeah. So then we see, next day at school, we see Heather McNamara in her cheerleading outfit. She's sitting in class. And we see that, you know, she runs out of the classroom. Because I think Veronica is also there too. And I think that Heather Duke is there as well. They're all in class together.
Yeah.
And she runs out there and, you know, all that. And we see that Heather McNamara is going to try and kill herself by swallowing a bunch of pills, which is one of the worst ways to go, honestly. Because you don't actually end up, like, instantly dying from that. So,
no.
That's the whole thing. Ugh. I do like the line of, damn child protective caps. God, it's so stupid. But it's good, though.
So good.
It's that dark humor that's there.
Yeah.
So she tries to kill herself. So, like, Veronica, like, you know, Heather got up and, like, left, and the teacher's like, where's she going? And then Heather Duke's all like, she's gonna go cry. And then Veronica, like, runs after her, and he's like, well, where's she going? And so then we see that, you know, stop it, you know, and all that. And so, you know, Veronica's just like, you know, girl, I mean, there's no reason to, like, kill yourself. Like, don't do that. And so they're sitting on the floor of the bathroom, which is gross, but okay, I'll let it happen for the movie. And so then that's pretty much, you know, they're sitting down there. And there's also a nice little line in here where it says something about, like, if you were happy every day of your life, you wouldn't be a human being, you'd be a game show host. Which, in a way, I mean, I don't know how deep this script really is. I don't know, but, like, there is some
its moments.
It's just showing that, like, hey, you know, you don't have to be happy every single day of your life. That's not normal. Like, we have feelings. So, anyway, but they get to, like, have their little makeup session and whatever. It's nice and fun. Heather then burns blackmail photos as well.
Yeah.
So she burns those. And so, in the meantime, JD gives Heather Duke a petition for people to sign. So because she's popular, she has everyone sign this petition or whatever. But she kind of, like, fudges the truth exactly on what they've been signing. This is also where we have the iconic shot of Heather Duke just, like, sitting out on, like, this windowsill.
Oh my god, it's so epic.
With the way that the light is, like, coming through the window, just, like, backlighting her, just... Yeah, and then she starts wearing red.
Yes.
So red becomes her color now. She's taken over as the main Heather.
Absolutely, yep. So then Veronica and Heather, they fight with each other after that scene, you know, saying, like, you know, Veronica, why are you pulling my dick, you know? And all that kind of stuff.
Heather, why are you being such a mega bitch?
Exactly. She was like,
because I can be.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, we have that, and... You know, even Heather says something about, like, you know, do you think that if, like, Betty Finn's, like, if her fairy godmother made her cool, she'd be still with her dweebette friends? Veronica. We see JD is also, after Heather leaves, we see him talking with Veronica. He thinks she's going to come back to him at this point, but that's not the case. And he's like, no, she's like, no, JD, it's over. Whatever you want to do, but, like, we're not together. We're not doing this. You're done with me. So then, in the meantime, while Veronica's on her way home, she apparently JD calls Veronica's parents because they're sitting at home. She's like, "Hey, what's up?" And then pretty much we find out that JD had called her parents to say, "Oh, we think she's going to kill herself or whatever."
Yeah.
And so they try to have a talk with her, but they're really bad at it because they're bad parents. So like, you know, they're saying we should keep you away from pharmaceutical drugs, sharp objects, closed garage doors or whatever. Like, as you can see what we said earlier, like trigger warning for suicide, but there's no actual suicide in this movie. And then also a lot of it is just played for this really dark comedy, if anything.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah. But Veronica and JD are in her room. So like she goes up to her room and she's like, you know, taking a little bit of a nap or whatever. She's just tired. And so Veronica and JD comes into her room and they're all like, you know, they're talking about whatever and talking about just like how Heather has become so drunk with power at this point.
Yeah.
And so they're like, all right, well, what are we going to do? We got to cut off the head, right? You know, so we're going to. And so Veronica and JD end up going to Heather Duke's house to go and kill her at this point. And so then this is where they go through like her kitchen or whatever. And they're like, you know, trying to figure out like, okay, we're going to slit her wrists. Like, that's what we'll do. And so they find the knife. And then Heather's, so Veronica's all like, you know, she wouldn't slit her wrist with a dirty knife like that. Like, you at least clean it off. Yeah, I think I know her a little bit better than you do, right? And then this is where like JD's also like, nag. You're like, fine, can you see your fucking reflection in it? So then we see that JD like goes on about whatever. And so then we see that he actually does we don't see it actually happen, but like we're implied that like he kills Heather Duke to kind of finish it all out. And we see the iconic Heather Duke funeral where she's like laying in, you know, whatever. And he had also taken her copy of Moby Dick and found words in it. And the one word he thought was interesting was Eskimo, which at this point we use Inuit, but whatever. But yeah, they use that term, I guess. And so, again, Glenn Shattuck is back as the priest, and he's like presiding over this funeral. And I love this because like everybody's there and they're all in these like white get-ups with these like 3D glasses on. It's so
it's so
cool. At this point, you know it's surreal at this point.
You know this is a dream.
Yeah, at this point you kind of realize if you didn't already, because at first you don't realize. And then you're like, ah, shit.
Yeah.
So then, Heather Chandler comes back from the dead looking all fabulous. And she's just like, I had like way more people come out to my funeral or whatever. And she's like,
I know she's all dragged out.
She's so dragged out. I love it. And she's like, Veronica, the afterlife is just so boring. And whatever. And then we see that, like, you know, I made your favorite, you know, because we find out that Veronica likes spaghetti with lots of oregano. And we then find that, again, this is all a dream. And so she wakes up from her, like, dream or whatever. Yeah. And then Veronica goes over and she writes in her diary. She's like, let's do this. Like, we're going to take JD down at this point. This is what we're going to do. So, you know, let's give him something where he didn't actually have it happen. Like, let's do that. So then we see that JD actually has been outside this whole time, and he was going to come in through her window. And so we see that Veronica fake kills herself. So she hangs herself pretty much. We find out. We do think it's real at one point, I guess, because pretty much what happens is that JD lays out his entire plan of what's going to happen. Pretty much what he's going to do is he's going to blow up the school, generally. And so he lays all this out to Veronica while she's just hanging there, because he's just like, you could have just, you know, waited, like, whatever. God. He lays out his whole plan. The petition was actually agreeing to be blown up because he reads from it. All this stuff. So then he leaves after he hears Veronica's mom come upstairs, and, you know, he's like, I gotta get out of here. And so then Veronica's mom finds her body, and she's just like, oh, maybe I should have let you take that job at the mall, but I just thought you were just, I know, right? It's so dumb. But, like, you know, then we see that, like, Veronica pokes her head up, and she's just like, hey, Mom, this long face. And then she's just, what the fuck is going on here?
She duped him.
But she didn't believe, but he doesn't know necessarily. So we have the next day at school. So we see that, like, I believe JD comes to school with his dynamite because we saw him working on his dynamite beforehand. And so then he comes there with his dynamite. He's going to set it up in like one of the bathrooms, I think underneath the school, and then end the gym. He's setting it up. And so Veronica comes to the school. Miss Fleming sees like her, and she's like, I thought JD said that you killed yourself last night. And she's just like, where is JD? And then saying something about like,
choosing to kill yourself is one of the most important decisions a teenager can make.
Yes, and then she says, "Get a job." It's so good. It's so dumb. Anyway. So then we see JD setting up his dynamite in the gym and all that, and then we see that Veronica's like walking through the hallway while everyone's in class, but then we see class change when the bell rings, and then pretty much what happens is that Veronica meets up with like one of the geek guys or whatever, and she's all like, they're all heading over to a pep rally that apparently you have to go to, and so what ends up happening is like she asks one of the guys, she's like, "What's underneath the school? What's underneath the gym?" And then he's like, the boiler room. And she's like, oh, that's probably where he's at. So then we see that JD is actually in the boiler room because that's where he's going to go set up the detonator. And we see that Veronica and JD are underneath the school. Yeah. So she has her gun. It's got her gat. And she's about to like shoot JD at this point. And she's just like, okay, I knew that. And so then at some point, they wrestle a little bit, and then JD knocks Veronica out at that point, pretty much. We then see that JD and Veronica fight. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but pretty much we find out he puts the detonator on in the boiler room to like set off the bombs and shit like that. And then pretty much we're cutting back to the pep rally. This is also very like Stanley Kubrick of them, like just the way that they cut back a lot.
Agreed. Yeah.
Like you can tell this is very stylized how they do this ending for sure. Where I'm just
very
like,
much
God
so.
Damn, right? You can tell that it's just not thrown together. It's very thought out. Yeah. So JD and Veronica fight. What ends up happening is like Veronica ends up overpowering JD at some point. This is also where we have the line of like the only place where people are truly nice to each other in high school is in heaven or whatever. So then we have Veronica shoots off the middle finger of JD when he like flips her off or whatever, which is really funny. And so pretty much, this is where Veronica and JD, they just come to the point of like, how do I turn this off? How do I undetonate this bomb at this point? And so he tells her how to do it. And so she turns the bomb off. So nobody dies, thank God, because New World Pictures didn't want that. Anyway, so then we had Veronica and JD. So Veronica is like walking outside. She's been through so much. Our baby's been through so much. And, and JD also walks out after her. And we see that he has like bombs just set up on his person to do a suicide bomb. And he's talking about whatever the fuck. And the ending part, well, nearing the end of the movie at this point, we see that JD decides to blow himself up, which also then lights Veronica's cigarette she's smoking, which is hilarious.
It's
very good.
Iconic.
It's very good. Such a good ending, and with that. So yeah, JD's dead. Some of the Heather, the one Heather's dead at least, and some other people are dead. Right. But now, we're clearing the end of this movie, so JD blows up, and then Veronica walks back into the school. She sees
Heather Duke.
And she sees that, she says, Heather, dear, there's a new sheriff in town.
Takes the scrunchie.
She takes the scrunchie from Heather Duke, and then she goes up to Martha, who is okay. She's in a wheelchair. She's in like a rolling wheelchair. And she says, hey Martha, like my prom date kind of flaked out on me, so I thought we could maybe like get some new releases, pop some popcorn, just chill. And then Martha says her one lines of the movie, which is, I would like that. And so then you have that ending pretty much, and we end the movie there. This actually was supposed to be a little bit of a different ending at first. This is actually going to be the same kind of thing, but Martha wasn't going to be nice. She was actually going to say, fuck you, Veronica. And she was going to like shoot Veronica in the face.
Oh, shit. I didn't know
I know. It was supposed to be a whole different story, but that's not what happened. We get this nice ending of Veronica and Martha being nice to each other. There's a new sheriff, so now Veronica can, make people feel way better about themselves now, I guess. And then we close on another cover of Que Sera Sera by Sly and the Family Stone, which is also great.
Which is also a great cover, yeah.
It's so good, so good. And then that's the end of Heathers. Needless to say, this movie is great. I give it a 4 out of 5, I think, on Letterboxd. I just love it. It is so, like we were talking about before, like it's the template of how you do a dark comedy for a teen movie.
Yes.
It's had so much influence just, I think, with maybe young ladies who like this movie, young gays who like this movie for whatever reason. Maybe because of the fashions and just like strong women is what we like. But yeah, I mean, I love this movie. I think it's a movie that, it's right up my alley when it comes to these kinds of films. And it's an early example, I think Joe Bob said it in his special, if you don't have Heathers, you don't have Clueless, you don't have Jawbreaker. Nope. You don't have Scream, maybe. You know what I mean? Like,
no,
this really showed
true.
that, like, you could go dark with that. All the Scream heads can come after me, whatever. Fight me. Does your cat have something to say, too? Mine's sitting right here, too.
Yeah, my cat loves Heathers.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So which Heather are you?
Which Heather am I? Girl, I don't know. Ooh. I think I'm Heather McNamara. I'm not the prettiest. But it's
damn these childproof caps.
Yes. But no, it's so true. But yeah, no, I like her. Yeah, I'm not a bitch like Heather Duke, but I'm not Heather Chandler either. I'm in the middle. So I'm Heather McNamara. Plus also I'm the model of the group. So it's fun. Which one are you?
I think I'm a Heather Duke, honestly. I'm in it for the long game,
Fair enough, I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you can find this movie on, right now you can find it on Tubi, Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything to wrap up about this movie and just anything like that?
Oh gosh, just if you haven't seen this film, please give it a chance. Yes. It is, the mother of all dark teen comedies, and has its cult status for a reason. So I'm so glad that I got to talk about it with you today. This is fantastic.
Yeah. I love being able to talk with stuff about, why these movies came to be and why they became cult classics and all that. It's kind of what my show is all about. But, I love being able to, of course, other people have colored Heathers, but I love getting a different perspective, and from a fan of like yourself, I really do appreciate that too. So
thank you.
I'm so glad to have had you on today. But thanks so much for coming on today, Donovan. I do appreciate it. We're going to bring you back. We'll figure out how to record and all that. We might bring you back for a nice spooky time. Perhaps.
Ooh, I would love a spooky time. Yes,
it's gonna happen. But if you want people to find out where you are online, please plug your socials if you like.
Sure. Yeah. If anyone wants to follow me, you can find me on Instagram at Donovan JM, Donovan JM. Happy to talk movies with anyone. I am such a big film buff.
Yeah, and then go watch his, go listen to his episodes on Movies That Made Us Gay for sure. Very, very
for sure. Yeah, and check out them too. They're great.
Yeah, and then just support queer people. Love it. Love all of it. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Donovan. I do appreciate it. Hope you have a good rest of your evening, and we'll definitely have you back on. Take care. Bye.
Right. Bye.
As always, if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can do so at cultcinemacircle@gmail.com. If you'd like to give any movie recommendations, give feedback on the show, or if you'd just like to say hey, I'm open to all of it. You can also follow the show on Instagram at cultcinemacircle and on Twitter at cultcinecircle. I tend to announce the movies that I'm going to be covering and just interact with people on there if they want. You can also follow me on Letterboxd at Jesse, Jesse, Kremp, Kremp, all one word. On that platform, I tend to log the movies that I watch. I write little stupid reviews about them and just general foolishness over there. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast on your podcatcher of choice, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm pretty much on all of them. Be sure to leave 5 stars and a 1 to 2 sentence review about the show so we can grow the audience and then just spread the love all around. Be sure to tune in next week to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast, where I'll be covering 2002's Ghost Ship. After discovering a passenger ship missing since 1962 floating adrift on the Bering Sea, salvagers claim the vessel as their own. Once they begin towing the ship towards harbor, a series of bizarre occurrences happen, and the group becomes trapped inside the ship, which they soon learn is inhabited by a demonic creature. As always, thank you for taking the time to listen to the Cult Cinema Circle podcast. And remember, if you were happy every day of your life, you wouldn't be a human being. You'd be a game show host. Take care. Bye.